actually.
Oh, here I am back again. So since I've already had a shot, I'll take less time than the other panelists, and I think we'd also like to hear from you. So I'm just going to really talk about 2 points, clarify a little bit more about what I said before, A, and B, say just a thought to maybe spur your thinking about the relationship between action learning and leadership. Okay, I did get some feedback that some people may have thought that I was overly critical or castigating project-based learning. I didn't, by any means, intend such a relationship. Project-based learning is immensely important in the kind of panoply of holistic learning elements. It's an improvement, you might say, or developmentally, right, at a further stage of development compared to classroom learning alone. And by the way, even action learning aficionados do not denigrate classroom learning or theory. I mean, theory gives us great insight into the world. It gives us a common language to share with one another. So there's a place for that. But we tend to like it when that learning becomes actionable because we like to get involved in the wild and woolly world of the workplace, no? So that's what project-based learning adds. It gives you a chance to kind of try out some of these ideas and try it out in a psychologically safe environment. And Victoria and I were saying that sometimes we find that action learning experiments, especially in the United States, launch too quickly. People all of a sudden get thrust into this project and then they have to sort of reveal and share, some of their innermost secrets in a learning team. I mean, maybe that's culturally a little bit premature. So the things that you are doing in, many of you in project-based learning, I think very fundamentally enriching. But ultimately, I think people want to see how things work in the real life, real world situation where they're confronting a real risk and they're dealing with real problems. There's no substitute for that. And so that's really the contribution where action learning makes, I think, a distinctive difference. But when you're engaged in real life experiences, sometimes you find that you're engaging in, what should we call it, unconscious intellectual activity, right? You're doing things well, but you're not necessarily sure why it is or how it is that you're doing it well. So you see, this makes way for the other component that we tend to call reflection, and its principal locus in the action learning experience is the learning set. And the English call it the set. We call it a learning team. And this is an ability that you might develop where you can uncover and raise to the surface those things that you're seeing, you're observing, and you're actually practicing in the world of practice itself. So all those components developmentally are very critical for a holistic learning experience. I just wanted to clarify that. As I said, secondly, I wanted to give you my own view about the relationship between action learning and leadership. And I think if action learning is practiced to its fullest extent, in other words, there are all the components, right, that Reg talked about and that Yuri probably enumerated in classical action learning. If all those components are there and there's a true dynamic of deep reflection in the learning team, I think it has the potential to produce a very different form of leadership than standard, conventional, if we have to say it, command and control leadership. Why? Because think of what's going on in the learning set. People are challenging each other. People are questioning everything. And you develop this humility that you really can't do very much without the help of somebody else. So the leadership that evolves in a true action learning experience is more of a collective, shared leadership in practice. It's leadership that arises from the practice itself without being lodged in the personality or the heroics of any one person, because you know that you can't accomplish anything just on your own. And it also arises from the dialectic and from the conversation that you're engaging in the learning team. I mean, after all, right, it's dialogue that shapes the concepts and the practices of how we view the world, right? So, and it's a contested interaction, isn't it, at the height of learning team dynamic. It's a contested interaction among a community of inquirers who share how they view the world. And lastly, it's an emancipatory dialogue, as I suggested earlier, where people are free from concerns about things like vulnerability and ignorance. So there is huge potential to advance leadership development of a different kind, but a kind that is going to be necessary for 21st century organization through this marvelous, incredible vehicle that we call action learning.